gonna hop in here and waste no time as one of Oregon's highest recruits in recent classes, Jurrion Dickey, former 5-star wide receiver, heads into his second year in Eugene, and he is drawing some praise in spring football. The Ducks have held 2 of their 15 spring practices. Now we all know they are going on a break until April 2nd, and then it is all gas, no breaks until the spring game on April 27th. But Roman, I wanted to talk about Jurrion because there's this perception, I think, with fans that when you see that 5-star rating, you always expect them to see the field early, make a big impact, whatever it is. But it takes time. And that was really kind of at the essence and the core of what Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator, had to say about Dickey over the weekend. And the short version of it is that he's saying, hey, it takes time to get comfortable. He had to learn the system. Now he knows where he needs to line up, what routes to run. And to that effect, he's healthy. We know that he had an injury his senior year of high school that kind of bled over into the start of his Oregon career. So he's healthy, he's in shape, and he's more or less the player that we expected him to be. So based on everything we heard from Stein, I think that Jurrion Dickey is definitely going to be a name in that wide receiver rotation.
Oh, absolutely. And that's somebody you want to keep an eye on anyways, of course, after, Troy Franklin departs for the NFL draft. And you're absolutely right. It does take some time, no matter who you are, unless, you want to look at guys like Orlando Pace, who just, plop right in at Ohio State and play left tackle for 3 years and then go off to the Hall of Fame. Like, it'd be great if every 5-star recruit was like that, but that's just not the way it works. So I really liked his film coming out of high school. And it's something where I would expect him to step into a much bigger role this year. And, I've heard a lot from just Big Ten fans saying, oh, Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, they don't know what they're in for with the Big Ten. But I think to a certain extent, you can go the other direction with that as well, where, the passing attack that Oregon had last year, the same thing about Washington, USC, where some of the offenses that they've put on films, I don't know if the Big Ten knows exactly what they're going to be getting in some of these high octane offenses out West.
And the thing about Dickey that's really cool is he was a really athletic, really physical receiver when I covered him coming out of high school. He was at Valley Christian, and then he transferred to Menlo Atherton, where coincidentally Troy Franklin played his high school ball. So for him, I think there's a lot of opportunity this year, because if you're just looking at the numbers, I think it was something like 80 catches that Troy Franklin had. I know Tez Johnson led the team and set a new record for a single season receptions, but you have those receptions that Troy frees up, and then Bucky Irving, he caught like 50 plus passes out of the backfield as well. So there's definitely some catches to go around in this 2024 offense for Oregon. But that said, there are some talented veterans that Dickey is contending with in that wide receiver room. You have Trayshawn Holden, who came back for one more year. You have Tez Johnson, who came back for one more year. Just some other names there at the wide receiver spot. Kyler Casper is back, and he is someone that was really highly touted coming in. He reclassed from 23 to 22, but we haven't seen a whole lot of him. Gary Bryant Jr. So there's a lot of names there. And then Ryan Pelham and Jeremiah McClellan are the blue chip All-Americans that they signed in the 24 class, Dylan Gresham. So there's so many names, so much talent there, but it seems like he's doing all of the right things, Jurrion is, to put his best foot forward. I know that Stein also mentioned that the bowl prep was really a good time for him to just hammer down those fundamentals. And now he said that he's taken balls off of defenders' heads with all of these, 50-50 balls or whatever it is. So I think that's one of the most encouraging and most promising storylines that you can have coming out of spring ball, even though there are only 2 practices in. But based on what Will Stein had to say, the arrow is certainly trending up for Dickey, it seems.
And that's what you like to hear. And, I'll comp this in the best way that I can, which is to Washington, what we saw last season, where, you can look at their top 3 of Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. And you can just say, because you can look at that in a similar light, right? Where you talk about what Tez Johnson did last year, what Trayshawn Holden did last year outside of Troy Franklin. And that was kind of the similar situation with somebody that I'm really high on this year, where he was not even close to the same caliber of recruit in Denzel Boston, but he was somebody who came in, made a lot of plays throughout fall camp last year. Took him a little bit of time to get acclimated after, he played a little bit in 22 as a true freshman, but you look for that progression. And that's all that you can ask for with some of these guys, because, you talk about that 5-star rating, and You're right. Every fan says, "Oh, that's a 5-star. That kid needs to come in and play right away, be a star, or else why are they here? What's going on?" But you have to remember, these kids are 16, 17, 18 years old. So it takes them some time to adjust to the college level. And a lot of times it's, "Oh, well, I was the best player at my high school in XY amount of seasons." Obviously, following Troy Franklin is no easy act at Menlo Atherton, but when you're doing that for so long, it takes a little bit of time to get adjusted to the college game. So you can't necessarily complain about Jurrion taking some time last year to adjust. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up as wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in terms of catches and yards this season for that team.
The last thing I want to say about Dickey before we get into a little bit of Huskies talk, that's why I brought you on, obviously, Roman. It's kind of wild to think about when you look at Oregon in recent years. I think that the caliber of player that they're recruiting at the position has drastically increased, and that really goes back to Brian McClendon, who's now the wide receiver coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was at Oregon, got a cup of coffee in Miami to follow Mario Cristobal, and then he went over to Georgia. But the wide receiver play at Oregon has been really good, and you're starting to get better recruits in, but it's not necessarily a school, even though it's been kind of right around the top of the sport. They're not winning national championships, obviously, but they've been in the thick of the conversation, certainly within like the top 10. It's not really a school that's known for prolific wide receiver play. Heck, before
Right.
Troy Franklin, Dylan Mitchell was the last 1,000-yard receiver, and I think that was in 2018 or 2019. I think it was 2018 when they went to the Red Box Bowl. What a brutal game that was to watch against Michigan State. I think it was a 7-6 final. But it's positive to hear this development on the wide receiver front for Oregon, but it's just crazy to compare it to the past. And we haven't really seen a lot of, high end wide receivers come through Oregon. And the next step is having not just one Troy Franklin, but having multiple studs. And that's kind of the direction that Oregon got themselves going in with Tez Johnson having the year that he had.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something where that's what you want to see as college football evolves, right? Where, you just look around and you look at Alabama a couple of years ago. You look at just some of these other teams at LSU now too, and what they were in 2019, 2020, where it's not that level, right? I'm not comparing that, but it shows that you need multiple top end wide receivers to get really far at this point in time. Look at what Washington did this past season with 3 guys that are going to hear their names called the top 3 rounds of the draft. That's really what it takes. And, it took a little while for Oregon to come around on that because they had such a, that hard-nosed style under Mario Cristobal for a while. But it's nice to see them adapting and getting to just this next level of college football because it really is important. And as, both these schools head into the Big Ten and head into the 14-team college football playoff now, you want to find every possible way you can to compete, and multiple high-end wide receivers are a really, really good way to get there.
The Ducks have the roster to do just that, to have multiple guys you can go to at any given time, some guys that can play a variety of roles for you. And I think that there's another reason with Junior Adams and the work that he's done. That's another reason to be confident in what Oregon's going to be able to do moving forward at the position.